Okay. That's a picture of the wall in my little office room. And as you might see, on that wall are lots of little things that are very dear to me, things that I hold passionate. So you'll see a few cricket bats signed by assorted people. You'll see some pictures. But holding center stage on that wall is a little painting. It's a painting with an interesting story. It's a painting of an alchemist. Okay? An alchemist, of course, all of us know, is that person who turns metal into gold. But what makes it special for me is the fact that it was gifted to me by a former boss and a mentor, a man called Suman Sinha, with whom I had the privilege of working across two organizations, Unilever first, and then PepsiCo. And when Suman gave me this painting of the alchemist, he had a little message for me. And he said, just as an alchemist turns metal into gold, our job is to turn men and women into leaders. Okay? And that's the message that's kind of stayed with me. It's a painting that stayed with me for most of my career. And what I want to do today is to really try and share some of those lessons that I might have learned in this journey as an alchemist from perhaps two alchemists themselves. So really the question for us is to say that if we want to be alchemists, and if we want to build these leadership factories, what can we do? And my message for you is pretty much this: become an alchemist. Become the kind of person who sees her or his responsibility as turning men and women into leaders. That's really what we're going to try and do. And what I will do now is to share 5 or 6 lessons that I've learned in this journey, which I thought might be of interest to all of us as we try and build our own leadership factories. Here's the first one. Before you get to work on individuals to try and say, how can I make them into leaders, focus on the organization and say, hey, how can I get passion to be unleashed in this organization? How do we get people to be passionate about what they do? I firmly believe passion is that magic ingredient that can allow 1 million leaders to bloom. Now, we've all heard that line about how there's this animal that seems to eat strategy for breakfast, but we've all tended to skip breakfast and leave strategy alone. Okay? So if you really want to create that culture, try and say, how can I unleash passion? And very often, and if I go back to my days at Pepsi, passion was as simple as saying, hey, how do you wear that company name on your shirt? What are those things that make you identify with your business? And for us, it was war. If you go back to those good old days of the cola wars, it was blues versus reds. Okay? You would do anything to get after the reds, and I'm sure if there are some former reds in this room, or indeed reds, you had the same mission at your end too. And so the rules were pretty clear. If you worked at Pepsi, you would never go and eat a burger at that place because they only served the other thing. Okay? If you worked at Pepsi, you could drive a car of any color except red. Okay? It was funny. I remember when we'd moved into a new city and our kids had gone into a new school. From his first day at school, my son, all of 9 years old, comes back and says, Mom, bad news. And Mom says, what happened? And he says, Mom, I'm in Red House. Yeah? That is passion. And it's not as if someone in HR sends out a circular saying, thou shalt not go to Red House or thou shalt not eat that burger. It's just that inside of you, you start saying, this is what I'm all about. And therefore, I think it's important for all of us to say, how do we ensure that before we try and build leaders, try and tell them, what's this organization all about? What's our purpose? Why are we doing what we are doing? Empower those people. Most organizations tend to start thinking that control, decision-making should all keep moving up so that you create a lot of followers down there. Push decision-making down, push control down, and you'll create a bunch of leaders, people who feel proud of what they're doing, people who take ownership in what's happening. Okay? And I really think that those 300 rupees that you might spend on that t-shirt for an employee is worth $1 million, because you want people to know that's where they belong. And I love that line, apparently from an Arsenal hero, who said, play for the name on the front of the jersey, and people will remember the name at the back. And that's really what passion can do for your organization. Lesson number 2 And it's something that used to happen every year during appraisal season. And you would find that Suman, good old Suman, CEO of the business, would sit up all night on discussions where everyone from assistant manager upwards in the organization was being appraised. He would make sure the business leaders were there, he'd make sure HR was there, but he wasn't content with saying that here's what he's done against his targets, these are his achievements, I think he's a great guy, let's rate him X. He wanted to know who was this person behind that rating. He wanted to know how did this person actually achieve the results that he might have achieved. I think there's a great message in that for all of us. You know that old saying about gold? All that glitters isn't necessarily it. And I think we all need to be careful that we don't get conned into thinking that leadership is about someone who looks like a leader, or it's about a title or a level. And there are several people who say, oh, we've got our entire leadership team. What does that mean? You know, everybody above general manager or above a certain level. That's not how you'd want to look at your leaders. I think there are enough tools available. A walk outside will show you lots of those too. Find a way to know your people. Test for leadership, test for mettle, and try and say, have we understood who these people are? And once you do that, you will find that you have a far better handle on saying, what's the material that I'm working with? If you want to know what org structures in the future will look like, that's what it'll be. That's what a hierarchy will look like. Hierarchy will be history. Okay? And I think for too long, we've thought of leaders as these people who've got a bunch of people reporting into them. That's what the new organization will look like. And it's almost as if you're going to have to look at it and say, hey, who's the leader here? Okay? And every individual on that team will say, at various points in time, I am a leader. Okay? And you'll find that various people, different people are actually saying, that's me, that's me, that's me. And it's interesting if you want to understand how do you make that happen. There's a little story about a kid who was very keen to become a footballer. And he remembers his first day of football coaching. Okay? So all these kids have come out, brand new shoes, new socks, new shorts, and they're all waiting for the coach to come in. And the coach, big man, arrives, and all those kids are so excited to get started on their first day of football coaching. And that's when one of those kids notices that, hey, the coach is here, we are here, but there's no football. Where's the football? And so the kid asks the coach, Coach, where's the football? And the coach says, on a football field, how many players do you have? And they say, 22. And how many footballs? 1. So at any point in time, there's only one person who's in contact with the ball. Today, we're going to learn what the other 21 people do. Okay? And I think that's really what all of us need to look for when we are looking at leaders. Leadership is not about how do you score more goals and what do you do when you have the ball. It's about what do you do when other people have the ball. So as you look for leaders, before we get too caught up in leadership traits, look for team players. Look for people who are delighted to help other people. Look for people who are helping other people achieve their goals. And suddenly, you will find that you're looking at potential winners. I firmly believe leadership is often overrated. It's teamwork that matters. It's team players that you want to go after. A lot of our problems in organizations actually stem from this. We tend to get people who are too caught up in themselves, in their own ability to do things. And then we wonder, where did we go wrong? Okay? Start early, find out, hey, do I have a good team player here? And maybe you'll find that you've got something that you can really work with. Okay? Alchemists, you'll know that making gold is long and tough. It's not an easy process. What starts off, the raw material, is dirty-looking ore. Okay? It looks nothing like the gold that you really want. And then that goes through a whole lot of treatment. It gets hammered, it gets treated, chemically assaulted, it gets into boiling points, which, temperatures are very, very high, because at the end of it, they know something good is going to come out of it. Okay? And maybe there's a lesson in that for all of us as we try and build leaders. Okay? If you want to know which is the world's best school for leadership training, this is it. It's the school of hard knocks. It's the school where you actually end up getting hammered. Okay? Many of us think that leadership is something that you'll be taught in the hallowed portals of a business school in a corner of the world. Not true. I think leadership is learned on the shop floors of our factories. It's learned on the streets of Siliguri where there's some chap trying to sell some product for you. It's learned in stores. It's learned with customers who say, no, I don't want your product. And that's where leaders are born. Leaders are born in a factory where there's a problem, labor isn't working. That's where leadership is born. So make sure that you don't try and mollycoddle and protect your young leaders. Throw them out, throw them into the deep end, and let them learn for themselves what it means to be hammered, to lose, to be beaten, to fail. And when that happens, they'll emerge as stronger leaders. Okay? And I love this idea of what makes India a great cricketing nation today. If you look at the Indian team, you know, you've got talent coming out. There are fast bowlers emerging where there were none earlier. There are young batting sensations. There are great wicket keepers coming out. Why is it happening? It's happening because there is this entire system at work below the surface. It's not about this great Indian team. It's about an India A. It's about an under-19 team. Okay? Young kids are being groomed, are being readied to take on roles when there's a vacancy in that big team. For all of us here, maybe there's a message. Don't spend too much time on leadership development with leaders. Try and spend that time working with people who are not yet there. Okay? And if you look carefully, you'll find on the left of your screen one of India's finest L&D professionals, a man who answers to the name of Rahul Dravid. Okay? Here's a man who's chosen to work with that young talent to say, I think I can make a difference here. I think we can groom these kids to become the kind of people who will one day bring honor and glory to this country. So I think it's a good message for all of us. Start early. Okay? Don't wait for leaders to get there and then say, now let's try and train them to become better leaders. Start early. Work on leaders before they actually become leaders. And that brings me to lesson number 5. Okay? And I want to tell you a little bit about a survey that they did with Champions League footballers in Europe. Okay? And they found something interesting. They found that footballers who are two-footed, on an average, earn 27% more than footballers who are good with one foot. Okay? Essentially meaning that, you know, most footballers have one strong foot, but if you can get the other foot to be pretty strong, you are an asset. And, you know, if you follow football a little bit, you'd probably say, yep, that makes sense, because, you know, it increases flexibility. You can play on either end. It probably improves your ability to score goals, because never mind which foot the ball came on, you can actually score goals. And I think leaders need to take a lesson out of that. We all need leaders who are two-footed. Okay? Too often, we have leaders who are strong in one suit. Okay? And for them, every problem looks like a solution from their area of operation, from their area of strength. They don't understand what it means to operate in an area where you're not an expert. So look for leaders who are good at more than one skill, at more than one function. You got a great sales guy, send him for some time into ops. You got a great ops guy, let him understand commercial. You got a great commercial guy, maybe send him to HR. No, don't do that. That might be job threatening. But find a way to make sure that you have people who are learning other skills. There's something else that's interesting about this. Okay? They have found that you can't teach a professional footballer to develop the other foot. You've got to start young. Okay? And that's why in Scotland they have the Other Foot Soccer School, where you have little kids who learn what it means to get both feet to become strong. Okay? When they're kids, it's okay to kick and find that the ball has gone somewhere else. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make a mistake. But once you become a professional footballer, when you have cameras on you, you cannot make a mistake. Okay? So don't try and tell that CFO who's now in line for the CEO's job to say, now let's get his people skills to get better. Too late in the day. Okay? Try and start early. Okay? Try and make sure that once you've got them in early in school, teach them what it means to have a solid second foot. Okay? And that's really what I think we should try and do. Strengthen the other foot. Make sure we are giving our teams an opportunity to not just be specialists in one function, but to also try and say, let me understand what it means to be in other places. I think just being aware that as a leader, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room for everything that's happening is a big lesson. Okay? Very often, leaders are uncomfortable with the idea that somebody else in this room knows more than I do about something. Okay? Don't let that happen. Make sure people feel very comfortable with the idea that, hey, I have my areas of strength, but I've also learned what it's like on the other side. I've also seen what happens on the other side. So train the other foot, okay? And I think that's a lesson that comes from gold too. If you look at it, to strengthen gold, what do? You actually add copper and you add silver. You add less valuable metals to make gold stronger. Okay? If gold was pure gold, just gold, and stayed in its area of comfort and allowed it to stay just there, it wouldn't be so strong. Okay? The mistake many of us make is we have a talent which is doing very well for us, and then we are scared to move her out because we feel that the organization will lose out on her contribution in the role that she is in. Move her out and let her go and learn something new. Let her go and take on a role which will teach her completely new skills. She may see there may not be as much immediate value perceptible, but like copper and silver would do to gold, you will find that it actually strengthens the talent that we have. Okay? So that's really the fifth lesson. Build diverse skill sets, build a variety of experiences. So that then are the 5 things that I think can help all of us to get that leadership factory going. First, build passion. Get people to feel proud of the place where they work. Second, know your people. Spend time. Get leaders to spend time on appraisals. Get leaders to spend time visiting people at their workplaces. Let them go out to the market, to the shop floor. All of us need to do that so we know our people. Third, look for team players. Leadership is often overrated. The first thing you need in a good leader is he or she a good team player. Lesson number 4, start early. Don't wait till they get to the top to now tell them what they need to do differently to become better leaders. Get those good habits going in early in the game. And the 5th one, strengthen the other foot. Make sure that there's diversity in their skill sets and in their experiences. Do that, and you will find that your leadership factory starts to work. As I've gone through this journey, I've found these lessons work for me, but there's one other thing, just one more thing that I want to share with you before I finish. And that's a lesson that I've learned along the way, which is this, that the purpose of alchemy is not really to turn metal to gold, but it's about finding the gold that's hidden inside. Okay? There is leadership gold inside each of us. There is a leader inside all the people who work with us. Our job is to find it. Thank you very much.
Well, that was nothing short of amazing, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hear it once again for Prakash. Prakash, thank you so much. Now, I must tell you that we have some copies of Prakash's books actually, The Habit of Winning and The Secret of Leadership available. And he will now be available for book reading and book signing in the unconference area. So go ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to now take a quick tea and coffee break, which will last 10 minutes. But before you go, some very important announcements. After the break, we're going to kickstart our parallel tracks